Igniter of Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur, and this is the KDE Podcast Live. With a beautifully diverse panel of co-hosts, get ready for powerful and fresh perspectives of what it looks like to be a Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur. Let's go.
Let's go. Let's go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the KDE Podcast Live, episode 449. Whoa.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
Whoa. I need to really set and figure the dates out because, well, I know the 500th episode is not, my birthday, but it would really be good if it were. It would be a great episode. My birthday falls on a Wednesday, so we'll be live, right? Just want y'all to know that, okay?
Any excuse for a party, huh?
Yeah, we definitely need to have a party on that day live and let everybody else come.
Yes, we do. I am Latara Venice, and we are here with 6 of us total. We're going to bring Brandon in a minute. I have to send him something. But listen, we have Joy, we have Michelle, we have Dory, Alicia, and Phil. And as is our norm, we're going to kind of tell you what we've been up to since the last time we met. Some of us just last week, some of us a few weeks. But hey, we're going to tell you anyway. Let's start with Joy.
Joy. I'm sorry. We always start with joy.
Hey, I like starting with joy. I mean, the concept is really cool and I like talking. So this past, what have I been up to? I am coming down. Actually, I don't want to come down. I'm on a mountaintop because my husband and I got to participate in a wonderful couples retreat that was kingdom focused vision and planning and strategy. And the beautiful thing for me is that my husband now has a new understanding about what I do in business so that he can come alongside me and understand what I'm saying, when I'm talking about, and give me valuable input and knows how to pray. And it's just a whole bunch of goodness. I'm just gushing over that whole experience. That's what I've been up to.
How awesome is that? Yeah, I was sitting there last week, I was sitting there going, maybe one day I'll be able to be there. It's coming. It looks like you all had a great time. I love that. I love the work that Phil and Shay are doing with couples. I think that is so very important. So glad you got to join in and that your husband was able to really connect to what it is. It's funny how the spouses sometimes really don't connect. And once they engage in something like that, they begin to go, oh, so now I see how I can be of assistance. I love this. Now I see how I can support. That's really good. All right. Michelle.
Hey, well, first of all, I've been basking in this morning's 62 degrees here in South Florida. That's a big deal for us, 62 degrees. It's not that anymore. But however, I've enjoyed it. And someone told me it's going to be colder tomorrow, so excited. But right now in December, I'm entering into what I call my reflection stage right here, where I look into the mirror, the state of my business, the state of my life, and I look at the good, the bad, and the ugly. So this is this time for me to kind of take a look, be reflective, be thankful, but also be listening. That's where I am right now.
That's good. I love that. Always that time of the year. Yeah, always that time of the year. And believe it or not, there are a lot of people who really still don't even do that. And they go into the new year with no forethought or anything of what's happening, and it's not where God is on a year's, like on that month time, like we are, goes from year to year. It's just that it's important that we learn to reflect from one year to the next and know where we're going and what we're going to be doing and, what God is doing with us. So thank you for sharing that, Michelle. That'll be a good episode. Okay. So Alicia.
I'm going to play off of Michelle a little bit and just say I'm super excited, actually. And what's going on with me right now is I've had
quite some time, months actually, where God just had me pulling back because I had put this like wrapping paper all around myself of what I thought that I needed to look like, whether that be in business or in consulting, whatever, all the things. And God's like, it's time to pull back and take off this shell of what you think things should look like. And let's spend some time together and figure out what they look like. So I'm really excited for the new year because for the first time in a really long time, I have complete and utter clarity about where God's taking me and what I'm doing next and how he shaped me to do what I'm supposed to be doing. So I'm really, really excited for what's to come.
That's good. I love that. Seems like a lot of people have been actually in that space, and not just this time of the year, this whole year, right? I've been talking to some people, and like I've been like, I feel like God is reinventing me. I have a whole branding team now. I have 2 people who are going to be helping me because they see this whole thing, and God's been giving them just what they see before I even see it. So it's really interesting how God is. He's shifting some things in people, right? And it's going to be interesting to see how those things
Well, and if I mean, I don't want to hijack anything here, but this is going to really, that type of concept is going to really fall into our conversation today, because when we think we know better than what God knows, that's pride. That's not
Yeah.
us being meek.
That's
And,
good. That's good. Good stuff. Good stuff. Dory.
Hang on. Well, that was a good segue because that's exactly where I am right now. Things are shifting as we speak, as Dory is moving into her next stage. We'll play on words there because next stage is in my business name. So you just never know what 2024 will bring. I'm getting a lot of downloads and help from other people to see a new vision and different ways to do things. So that'll be cool. Other than that, our Christmas concert at my church is coming up on Sunday. And as the percussionist, every year I get to channel my inner Sheila E. If you don't know who Sheila E is, just look her up. I'm playing all kinds of percussion.
No.
What's that?
If you don't know, you should know. Okay.
That's right. That's right. She's an awesome percussionist. So yeah, so it should be loads of fun. So we're looking forward to that.
Awesome. Love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love to see a little piece of that. Thanks for sharing, Dory. All right, Brandon, what you been up to?
Yeah, I'll keep the shifting theme alive. I feel like a lot of things have happened over the last several months in my business too, where I'm having incredible conversations with different business owners and entrepreneurs who are actually a lot of them are Christian and kingdom entrepreneurs too, just really wanting to shift their industries and just honestly getting to sit with them and ask questions and help out where I'm able to help out too has been a ton of fun. And I haven't had as much of that, but other than the last 2 months, it's starting to see more of that pattern, which has been a lot of fun. And then on the personal side, we celebrated my wife's birthday on Monday, and over the weekend we went with her dad and stepmom and camped in San Diego County, and it was a lot of fun. Little chilly. It was even down into I think high 30s, low 40s, but we had a fire and stayed warm. But it was nice to be outside and celebrate her for her birthday.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. Where were you at again? You said you went.
I said San Diego County is because I can't really pronounce the name. It's like Lake Cucamonga. So for those that live in San Diego County, don't quote me on the pronunciation of that. You know what I mean?
Okay, that's good. Yeah, there are places in Southern California where it can get kind of down there. So yes. All right. Love it. I love it. You guys are just so adventurous. I just love it. Y'all can go camp by yourself. If I don't have a whole cabin and a bathroom inside the cabin, I'm good.
Well, this one was like a camp. This one was a camper. Typically we will go tent camping, but this case was a camper. So it did have running water and the heat was actually out. That was a bummer, but it was supposed to have.
Okay.
You know what we call that? We call that glamping. That's what we call it.
Listen, I said a whole cabin, not a camper, a cabin. I'm real bougie when it comes to camping. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, look, right. We've tried the tent thing when the kids were younger. I'm thinking, not for me. I'll take a cabin.
Yeah. All right, Phil Bynes.
Well, Joy kind of talked a little bit about what was going on with my weekend. And so it was kind of cool. It is interesting that, God has been speaking to me and the wife about couples for a long time. And we haven't been able to quite find our stride with what that's supposed to look like, right? Because oftentimes when someone's doing something for marriages or whatever, it winds up becoming kind of like you need to save your marriage before it completely goes out. And we're not called to that, really. But I feel like this year might be the year of us doing things for couples, because we just did this thing this past weekend, and we got something scheduled with Dr. Tony the first month of the year, sometime in January. So it's going to be interesting. But besides that, man, I just like this reformatting and this reevaluating thing that I believe that a lot of people that are involved with the movement is experiencing. No, it starts with the visionary and the builder as well. We've been experiencing it, and the good thing that's coming out of it is showing us that there's growth that needs to happen, and there's some pruning that's happening before the growth. And so I'm excited about what 2024 is going to bring, because of the amount of pruning I think that we've been going through and undergoing as a team and as a movement as a whole.
Yeah, I think that would make a great topic as well too. I have to kind of write that down. I think it would be good for us to talk about, a lot of times when you're involved with movements and you really engross yourself in that movement and in the process of what that movement teaches, it's going to have a direct effect on you, right? And it's been funny watching how this year, the shifts and the changes that have been going on with KDE in some way have been going on with all of us who are truly engrossed in the movement, really a part of it and integrated, not just saying, oh, yeah, I know KDE. Yeah, but you're like in it. And it really does something just to just who you are and how you flow. And it all seems to be like, oh, you going through that too? What? Did that happen to you too? And I think that's important, because it can be scary for some people to go, well, if I get that involved, is that going to happen to me? But what does it look like? What are the benefits of something like that? You think about all the disciples and you're like, them disciples, they all died some ugly deaths. I don't know. Cause but look at the blessing of how they lived and what they did, as a result. And I think it's a great conversation as we are shifting some things on the podcast. It would be good to have that conversation one week. So yeah.
Well, Latara, yesterday I was on the webinar with Shay Bynes, and we were talking about dreaming with God. So it was really interesting. There were over 100 people online, and we were all going through different exercises, and it was so cool because so many things were happening where other people were chiming in. Oh, I got that too, and this is what I heard from the Lord, and this is what was going on with them. So it was very, very interesting to be that connected with everybody. Most of the people, we've never even met, but the fact that we were all connected with one purpose and we were all dreaming with God for the coming year. Very cool.
Yeah, it's going to be good. It's going to be it will be a conversation we'll have to have in the future. I really think it's a great one. Today we are talking about meekness. That's another good one, right? And it's funny because Phil, Michelle, and I were in a meeting earlier today, kind of talking about meekness and how pride can get in the way from some people actually seeing, or really from all of us at one point, probably in our lives, of seeing how meekness, which is basically humility, and when you understand it, it really is a strength and not a weakness. How if pride gets in the way, it's more detrimental to you than it is for you to flow in with a characteristic or of meekness. I can't stand saying spirit of, with a characteristic, because y'all only knew how tired I am of people saying spirit of this, spirit of that.
How about a posture of?
And it's not necessarily a spirit, right? It's, hey, the characteristic of meekness. I really think that's going to be, because it is a characteristic, because y'all notice what the fruit of the spirit is, right? Characteristics. Right. So we want to get into this conversation today, and I'm excited to do so. Phil Bynes, let's start talking about meekness.
All right, let's do it this way. Meekness is the standard for receiving in the kingdom, right? And so I'm going to start with Matthew 5:5, which is blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. And the first thing that jumps off the page when you read, well, at least when I read it this time around, blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth, is that it sets up the fact that in order for you to inherit what God has for you, you're going to have to be meek, right? So then that made me think, well, what is meekness? And I heard, I was listening to a sermon by, who was it? Joseph Prince. And he had said something about meekness that I had never heard before. And that made me go and research it, right? But he was talking about like meekness at the core is it's like being teachable, right? And so let's start with the definition of meekness that was found in the dictionary. And I think I might have added some that I found that have biblical significance as well. I can't remember, but let's see. Meek, to be meek, it means to be quiet, to be gentle. It also easily impose on, submissive. So, like when I think about being easily imposed on, like that doesn't sound like a good characteristic, right? It almost sounds like someone's a pushover if they're meek. But the cool thing about that is if you actually look at that from a different context, right? Let's think about a mature person versus a kid, right? Or an adult versus a child. My children, they can easily impose upon me, right? Because I'm going to work with them because I understand that they're not as mature as I am. So there's some things that they need, there's some things that they want that I'm going to acquiesce to them, right? But if I was not a mature father, I might be like, that's not the way we do it here. This is the way, and blah, blah, blah. And I could be really hard. And what that causes is a disconnect between the heart of the children and the father, right? And so to me, what that was pointing to is like, as you begin to become meek, it's like when Jesus said, you have to become childlike, right? You have to be willing to submit because in your submitting, he can relinquish more to you, right? It's like what he told what was that, the centurion? No, the centurion said to Jesus when Jesus was supposed to go to his house. It's like, you don't have to come to my house, Lord. I'm a man under authority, and I know I can say to someone, go, and they'll go. And so it's the same with you. You have the authority. Just say the word. I'll submit to whatever you say. And I know it'll be done. Right. And that's how it is in the kingdom. The kingdom doesn't have to impose upon because it's looking to give. Right. The kingdom doesn't have to impose upon because it already has everything that's needed. Right. And so for those that are actually operating more like kingdom, they don't have to worry about being meek. They don't have to worry about being taken advantage of because they know that they can't be taken advantage of in the kingdom because God's always going to give you back more than what anyone can ever take from you. But what do you think about that? I know I said a mouthful.
So in other words, it sounds like you're saying that if someone has an issue with being meek, then they kind of have an issue with really flowing in the kingdom, in the ways of the kingdom, right? And those are some things we have to look at. But that's part of growth, right? When you see that, okay, wait a minute, it's not really weak to be. It's not. I'm not trying to rhyme. I'm not trying to be Jesse Jackson here. Okay, it's not meek to be weak, right? It's not weak to be meek. I'm not. It's actually a strength. How do I get this? How do I gain that? And it's one of the fruit of the spirit anyway. When you look at the fruit of the spirit, they all go together, right? You can't have meekness if you don't have gentleness, or if you don't have, patience, if you don't have joy, and most often you don't have joy, if you don't have love. So when you look at all those different things, you're like, okay, so if I'm struggling with meekness, then where else am I struggling? Because all the fruit goes together. It's not individualized. It goes together. It's a representation of the true character of Christ, and we have to learn how to be all of those things. But we struggle because, well, we're flesh, we're human. We deal with some stuff. And so, for me, meekness has never been as hard when I'm applying all those different things. But when I'm struggling with patience, it's hard for me to be meek, right? It's hard for me to be meek when I don't necessarily sense the joy that's there. It's hard for me to be meek. It's easier for me to step into a moment of pride. It's easier, and pride can look different because sometimes we can be so humble that we're prideful, right? So how do you find that balance? And you have to really tap into what that fruit of the spirit is.
Yeah, when you talk about, Phil, you were talking about, I think Joseph Prince talking about being teachable, right? Meekness can look like being teachable. It reminded me of when I was when I was an administrator, a principal, and I was in leadership at the school. So we talk about walking in authority. So I had this authority in the school and the system, and I could, like the centurion, I could say a thing and things would happen. But where I found true value also is actually being teachable, not just from my supervisor or the one above me, but being teachable from those who are considered, in society less than or under or even under me. And so I would tell people I find value in having relationships with everyone from custodian to the teacher assistant to the teacher to the administrative assistant, everybody, because everyone has something to pour into me, to teach me that I don't know or I don't have a perspective on. And so it really helped me to get a broader view or a broader understanding of where I was and how I could serve better in my position. So I think the value of being meek and being teachable is understanding that just because you're in a place of authority, because a lot of us, we're business owners, we're leaders, right? We are over groups of people, that doesn't mean that those who, help us, assist us, support us, we can't learn from them. As a matter of fact, that's why they're there, in my perspective, is to learn from them so that you can get a better perspective, a fuller perspective of how to serve wherever you are.
That's good.
That's so good, Michelle. I think that even goes a little bit further too. Just as you had the example of being a principal, I worked with some strategic planning in a school district a few years ago. And I remember going into that situation, like my idea of what I expected from the school district as a leader in the community was very specific. And they were very good about how they sat us down around tables with not only other people who thought different, maybe even politically, different types of people around the table, but also they brought in different ages of people. And I learned so much from sitting across the table in a strategic planning session with a young person, so much more from that than I did anything else. And also it gave me the opportunity to recognize that sometimes, like, none of us are perfect. None of us have a perfect thought process and a thought pattern. And when we put on this prideful thing of we know the things, we've already made it, then we're not able to learn from people who are different or think differently than us. And we're not able to see the value in their point of view. Their point of view actually may be wrong, but there is value. There's some core value that got them to the point where they think. And if we're not able to lay down our own pride to be able to listen to what is the inner part of what that person is thinking, then we've lost something. And I think, and I don't know about you guys, but I see that this unwillingness to lay down our own agenda, I guess, to the point where we can hear other points of view in the world, it's making us more and more and more and more and more insular. And so that goes to what that scripture is about, us inheriting the earth. We have less and less footprint in the world the more insular we get. So I think that's speaks to that a lot.
Yeah. Go on, Joy.
The thought that came to mind as you both were talking about this was level of maturity, though, right? And I think maturity happens at any age, but reflecting back to my first career and just how I navigated when I first got out of college in the business world, I think that my point of reference was one of, I'm ashamed to say it, but it was a fact of know-it-all, right? I've got this, I can go do this. You can't tell me anything, that kind of thing. Let me run, let me go. And that doesn't demonstrate humility, and that doesn't demonstrate being teachable at all. There's no meekness in that. And I think that when we grow internally, when we grow in our relationship with Christ, that's when we become more pliable. That's where we become more teachable. That's where we say, oh, I know a lot, but I don't know everything. What can you tell me about this? Show me a different perspective. And I think that that is only something that can be developed with a level of maturity.
I think a lot of that too, I love that, Joy, is a mindset thing where if we do go in and thinking that we know everything, it's like, well, that is so arrogant. Like, oh, I couldn't learn from this person. They're quote unquote below me in status or money or their business, or again, insert whatever thing that you want there. But what I've been trying to do recently is just ask more questions and ask thoughtful, intentional questions, and then just stop talking and then genuinely listen to that person. And to Alicia's point, even if it's something that I don't necessarily agree with or I wouldn't apply to my personal life, I think just holding that space for people allows them to feel heard, feel seen, feel loved. Now, the key is you have to genuinely also love and care about that person to at least some degree. But I think a lot of that ties right into being meek. And even a quick Google search. So below the definition, some of the similar words that it gave: patient, peaceful, peaceable, humble, unassuming, modest. So a lot of these words that you guys have been sharing throughout this conversation so far are right under the list of similar words, even with a quick search. So I think it's really cool. Everything is tying in together.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that it. Joy, you got anything?
Yeah, actually, I was just thinking about times when I entered the workforce at an advanced age, and so I was in positions where the boss actually didn't know as much about marketing, and they just assumed because I was a new hire, I didn't know anything. So that was kind of awkward. But the cool thing was I actually spent the time to talk with the women who were in what they called the back office, to ask them what procedures were working for them and what weren't. And it was really eye-opening and insightful. And, whenever you have either a boss or a company takeover, somebody comes in and says, this is the new system, we're going to do it this way. But then you have all these other people who are saying, well, actually, this works really well for us, and this is why, and this is the system that we created. And so it just goes back to the point of being in a position to actually sit and listen to the other person's perspective, and being humble enough, like we've all said, to not be presuming that you're the one who knows everything, because guess what? You might not be.
Mm-hmm. That's so good.
But the thing that I keep hearing as you guys are talking about this even more is what we're seeing demonstrated around us in the world today, on the news, in workplaces, are people that are so hard-nosed, so hard-lined about whatever their position is, that they aren't pliable, they aren't really listening, and they're not meeting in the middle. So take our leaders up in Washington, D.C. right now. We see a lot of this happening instead of this happening, right? And if they were more humble and more teachable and all the adjectives that we've been using to describe what meekness is, I think a lot more could be accomplished without having to butt up against each other, which to me demonstrates what not to do. So
Yeah, that's good. And it's unfortunate that here in America, we're taught more to stand on pride than humility. That's why we struggle so much. That's why we struggle. So it's good stuff.
Yeah.
That's good stuff.
Yeah. So when I think about this at first glance, the challenge that most people have with meekness is that it looks like it is passive, right?
Mm-hmm.
It looks like it's lacking power, right? And so they don't want to show up meek because it's like, oh, well, I serve a powerful God, and, why would I show up with less power? But it shows a lack of understanding of how the power of the kingdom is exerted. Like when we think about the power of the kingdom, I take this script. Where is this one found? I can't remember exactly. I got it from an Old Testament, right? There's a scripture that says, the Lord says to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet, right? And that's the way that is exerted. But we'll wait till after our sponsors say what they say, and we'll get a little deeper into that.
Well, you could have kept on going. I know how to keep the time well, but listen, y'all.
But I haven't really gotten into it. So
okay. So that bell means that it is time to pay some bills, y'all. So we'll be back.
Maybe you're sensing the Lord telling you to do something different in your business. Maybe you feel isolated as the owner and decision maker. Maybe you sense it's time to stop doing business for God and start doing business with God.
How many can relate to that?
The Kingdom at Work Leadership Workshop is the next step in your journey. Join with other kingdom-minded business owners for a 3-day workshop in Lubbock, Texas.
God's absolutely talking to you.
It has been exactly what our team was looking for. It's always good to just recalibrate what our mission is with our work.
The Lord orchestrated this so you would hear this. The question at this point is, will you step into it?
This workshop is intended to help you, Kingdom Leader, take actionable steps towards seeing God's kingdom come powerfully in your business as it is in heaven.
I want you alongside me, Lord. What would you have me do?
Sign up today for our next workshop. Visit kingdomatwork.com.
What is the next step for you?
All right, we are back and glad to be back. And we're just going to turn this right on over to Phil so he can finish that awesome thought.
Before I go a little bit deeper, I wanted to let you guys know the Kingdom at Work people are the ones that did that video for us not too long ago. I can't remember which one it was called, but it was Fire Starter or something like that. So they're doing some good work over there at Kingdom at Work. And so I just wanted to say that really quickly. All right. And so, yeah, what I was saying is at first glance, meekness does not necessarily look like it's a position of strength. Right? It looks like a passive position. But like when we think about what the king says, like what the Lord said to the Lord Jesus, what the Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I make you your enemies a footstool for your feet. Right? So when you think about the right hand, right, that's a position of authority. It's a position of prominence. Right? Mm-hmm. And the Lord is saying to our Lord, sit here until I make your enemies your footstool. You're not going to have to work at this. I will do the work, right? And so that's the key part to being meek and receiving an inheritance from the kingdom of God. It's like God wants to give you something as his dear child. But what happens when you don't know how to be meek? You go out there and you make things happen by your own strength. And you might get some things by doing that. But it's not his best. It's not what he wanted to give you, right? And so it wasn't an inheritance. And if you think that you can accomplish for yourself something greater than God is willing to give you freely, then yeah, you don't understand the power of the kingdom. And so I think that's a challenge that we have to work through. And that's the part that makes me say that that's a place of immaturity. Like, because you think about a child. If anyone has raised adult children, let's even say, you have someone that's a teenager in your house or even in their early 20s. A lot of times they think they know a lot of stuff, right? Oh, I know. And they know something and they might go out there and do something and come back with something inferior. But once they become truly mature, sometimes you'll have a child that, has gone out the house and they've come back at 30. And it's like, Mom, I'm so glad you did this when I was growing up. I didn't realize what you were doing for me, but this is what it is, right? Because they've gotten to the point of understanding. They matured past what they thought they knew to true understanding of what was really happening. And so that's what the meek get to understand when it comes to the kingdom, right? They get to receive everything that God has for them, stuff that they couldn't even see. But they put themselves in position to be able to receive freely as a child, receive that inheritance, right? But you have to walk in meekness in order to get it. Because if any child that comes to me and say, I know, I step back, I take my hand off. I was like, okay, let's see what you know, right? And they get an inferior version of what I was going to freely give them, right?
Yeah, I just felt that daddy vibe come in. Phil, but I absolutely agree, and I think the more you understand meekness, the more you understand it is such a powerful and peaceful place to be in, because that's where God shows up greatest, right? When we make room for him to do what he does best, which is show up in his fullness, show up in his glory, show up to push his plans forward. Yes, through us as a vessel, but understanding that we don't have to strive to do it our own way, that if we partner and just say, Lord, okay, I'm listening to you. Where are we going? How do we get there? And so that's where I feel like meekness is really such a powerful place to be, and peaceful.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I gave
Yeah.
y'all the floor to talk. I didn't say y'all didn't have to talk. I just said,
So Michelle, when you said that, we don't have to strive, something that jumped out at me is that when we are truly being meek and we're leaning into the Lord, striving goes away because we're resting in him, we're abiding in him to show us how to be meek and how to do things. And that's a really big nuance.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
good. Dory, you had something?
Yeah, I was going to say, it's like sometimes when we jump in as entrepreneurs, okay, we're ready and hopping behind the wheel and you're in the driver's seat, or so you think, and you're trying to do it your own way, when actually sometimes you need to shift over and let God take the wheel, because you're trying to do everything in your own strength and you're not listening to God.
Yeah, that's good. I have a question. I don't know where Phil was going, but I have a question as I'm sitting here thinking, and I'm also looking at the time because I really want to touch on what does this mean for your business to show up meek? What does it mean for your business to show up meek? What does that look like? It's important as entrepreneurs that we kind of understand, you can't show up as the big bad boss or the big bad expert, right? What does that look like in your business? I mean, is there a time, do you guys, any of you have a story of where you realize that, whoa, wait a minute, this is more prideful than, and I have some things to apply here, or maybe someone came at you the wrong way and they should have been exhibiting meekness.
Yeah, I'll jump in then. So I feel like meekness plays into this in several ways, but the way that it usually shows up first is you'll get an instruction that looks like it's counter to what the world will tell you to do, right? Because I believe the Father is always trying to show us what He's placed inside of us and pull out the richness of the kingdom that's already inside of us. So He'll tell us something that will make us have to check our thoughts, what we thought we knew, our hearts, what we feel about something, and then we go from there. So for a business owner, if the Lord has spoke to you about something in the past and He says, I'm going to do this, the way that meekness shows up is us saying, okay, Lord, I know you told me this is what I'm supposed to be doing, but what does that look like in this season?
Mm-hmm.
Is there someone I need to talk to find out, what I'm supposed to be doing? Help for them to help me unravel this. Like, instead of being, well, God gave it to me, so I got the answers. Not necessarily, right? What meekness looks like for me is, as the CEO of Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur, is when God gave me a revelation that if I tried to build all the things that are on my heart to build for Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur, that I would build it wrong if I didn't involve the specialist.
Mm-hmm.
So now, me putting away my pride as the CEO, I have to have conversations with people that I consider to be specialists. Hear what they have to say about, the things that I'm doing. Sometimes, they might give some stuff that looks counter to what I'm looking to do, right? But I put away my pride and I hear them out, and I have to actually sit with the Lord afterwards. Okay, Lord, was there something in that for me? Did they accurately capture something from you for me that applies to me, right? And then work through that stuff. Many times there are something in that's for me, but a lot of times, most of what they said was not for me. But I have to humble myself to hear what they have to say, receive it, and try to apply it in a way that the Lord is showing me how they connect. And so that's one example of how that works in my business.
I have an example. If it's off out of alignment, y'all go ahead. Y'all can check me. It's okay. But it happened just recently where I was serving a client and I was sharing. We were planning for the strategies we would share with their team, and they had some oppositions that were really bumping up against what I believe, bumping up against what I would like to see happen for them. And I will tell you, I got a little warm on the inside. And there was a thought of like, they don't even know what they're talking about. This is not going to work. This narrative was playing. But then I said, okay, wait a minute. Let me stop for a moment and let me hear what they have to say. Let me take into consideration where they're coming from, why they're coming from this place, and then listen to how to respond. So to me, meekness can look like flexibility in terms of allowing yourself to say, okay, I'm just going to steamroll over what I know to be true. And it's not even that what you're believing is false, but that also, okay, I know this to be true, or I understand this to be true, but let me hear, what they're saying, their perspective, their thought, and then say, okay, where can I come in and support and assist that? Even if that means guiding them to, a place where they may not be comfortable. The fact that I'm not coming in like I know all the things and you don't know what you're talking about, or that doesn't like align with what I'm trying to do. That's where we become also insular. I think that's the word Alicia used. And that's where we miss the boat to reach people and have greater impact in the marketplace as well.
Yeah. Brandon, you got something? I see you over there.
Yeah. Well, no, I think meekness, even in this context, it helps us see people differently. Where oftentimes, we're all good at what we do in our business, and sometimes someone could come to us and we're like, "Oh, I've seen this 50 times before. I know exactly do X, Y, and Z," and then the problem's going to be solved. But I think if we're being meek, sometimes that's not how we should do it. Even again, if it is correct that we're ultimately going to recommend X, Y, and Z for that person, if we're able to create that space and again be patient, ask questions, listen, hear that person out, that ends up adding so much more value to them because we weren't prideful and arrogant and we gave them some of our time, even if ultimately maybe it's even we don't have the prideful heart and they come up with the solution, even though we were already going to recommend this thing. If we're able to probe and ask questions and pull it out of them, if you will, I think that is demonstrating of meekness versus just, hey, I want to come up with every single solution and I'm going to take credit for all of your success because I helped you along. That's not a good example of meek. So I think it helps us really see people differently. And once we see people differently, we react with them differently.
Yeah, that's good. I had a whole thought as you all were talking. I thought about Jesus, right? Jesus could have went around as the Son of God and all by himself. Yep. I'm Jesus. I'm the one you've been waiting on, right? But what did he do? He chose 12 men to be of assistance to him, right? And that took a level of humility because I'm the Son of God. I know why I'm here. I understand my identity. You the one need me. I don't need you. But he showed I do need you. I do need your assistance. And I think that one of the most dangerous things we can do in business, and I've said this before, and you guys will probably hear me say it 10 million more times, is that the thing is when you think about something like that, when we walk around as solopreneurs, that's the most dangerous thing that we could do. As business owners, we always need somebody. Every time I get a new coach in my community, one of the things that I ask them is, do you have a team member? Well, I don't need a team member. I don't care if it's just for an hour a month. I don't care if it's 2 hours a month. There's some task, there's something you need assistance with. Find someone to help you out so that you don't become burnt out. You're not doing all of those crazy hustle and grind type of things, and you have a flow, right? And then they're like, well, what does it look like? Okay, well, let's see what you have. What do you have on your plate? What wears you out? What makes you tired? What do you know is not your zone of brilliance? Right? That's one of the dangers, is you don't show up in the fullness of what God has called you to be or who God has called you to be, right? Especially in business. So it's really important that we look at that example of Jesus. See that.
Yeah, you and I were tracking the same place, Latara, with looking at Jesus, and not only did he choose 12 disciples, but he chose 12 very imperfect and broken and fallible disciples, right? So do we think he trusted them? Perhaps he did, but his trust was in the Father and in the Father's plan. And I think that when we are struggling with an ability to have humility, to have meekness, we can often look to see where the problem is by looking at what we're trusting in. Because if you're trusting in your own ability, if you're trusting in your own strength, if you're trusting in your own ideas without you're not trusting in the Father's.
That's good.
Yeah, and Alicia, getting back to the disciples, they were totally unqualified if you think about it, because a lot of them didn't even have any idea of, why did the Lord call us? And it wasn't necessarily because they were super qualified. It was because he saw characteristics in them that he knew would be valuable.
That's good. That's
The
good.
thing that I've been hearing as all of you have been talking is the word collaboration. I mean, meekness in its true form takes collaboration to a whole new level, right? And it's not sitting there working, as you said, Latar, by yourself, but it's working with other people, like you talked about, all of you talked about with the disciples, and that's just a game changer.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Anybody else? Because I have something else if nobody else does. It just, the thought just left my head too. Oh gosh, sometimes that.
It'll come
That
back.
happens.
Can I ask a question? Can I ask a question? So when we're talking about working with the disciples, right? Jesus worked with the disciples. So I think there is an aspect of meekness when working with people who show their imperfections or who walk imperfectly, just as we all do. And so sometimes we're quick to judge based on an expectation we have, um, and we have to remember, stay humble and say, okay, first of all, check and make sure this is the person, of course, that God wants us to work and collaborate with, of course, but also allow for those imperfections, allow for, without judgment, without frustration, in fullness of love. So that takes, I think, a humility, that takes a meekness, that even takes, to me, even being teachable to some extent, because we can learn from how other people walk their life out, or walk how they do business with us out. And so, because I've definitely learned from other people showing their imperfections or showing up, not maybe as I want them to, but like on the other side of it, it was just what I needed. And so, my first thought was, let throw them out, or in that situation. And then, because the Holy Spirit's like, no. And then on the other end, I said, okay, I see what you were teaching me. I see what you were showing me. So I think there is an element to that when it comes to working with others.
Yeah, I almost feel like, meekness, what the Lord uses, if we have an understanding, is he uses meekness just like he uses it for our children. He uses like our employees as an opportunity to be meek as well, right? And what I mean by that is, like, if you've had a child, you know what it feels like to have a young hopeless child. I mean, I shouldn't say hopeless, a young helpless child. They can't do anything on their own, right? And you have to do everything for them. And then as they're beginning to learn how to do something, you're helping them along the way. Oh, that's such a good job. You're celebrating them, right? And God uses that because actually it feels like that's probably the first time in our life that we really get to see what God feels like. Because like when he's dealing with men, in comparison to him, we're helpless. He has to do a lot for us. And he enjoys and he loves doing a lot, just like we would love and enjoy doing it for our children, right? And so I think that's one of the things that separates us from the animal kingdom in a lot of ways. At least the type of animals that come out the womb being able to advance pretty quickly. A dog comes out, it's not many days before they can, move around on their own, right? But a baby, it takes a little bit longer, right? Elephant comes out being able to stand, right? But the more helpless the person is, the more needy the person is, it's the greater opportunity we have to exercise what it looks like to be meek, right? And it's also the greatest opportunity we have in our life or in our business to look like who God is.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I love what you shared, Michelle. I thought that was really good. It's a good, because I call that sandpaper, right? It's like a person becomes sandpaper to you. And actually, Shay is the one who brought that up to me. I forgot, it might have been her that I was like, well, I didn't like you. And she said, yeah, I was sandpaper. But what it is that person oftentimes represents something you're either struggling with or need to grow into, right? And even that's a struggle. And that can be difficult to see when you look at somebody and you go, they got a nasty attitude. And then God go look in the mirror and you be like, attitude not nasty, right? And then you see that nastiness is a part of who you are. And that's what God is showing you. And that's where the growth has to happen. And that takes a lot of meekness to go, Whoa. So whenever I working in soul care, whenever I come up against someone like that, I have to check I always check myself before I go, well, they got a problem. Check yourself first. Check yourself.
Absolutely.
Right.
So in essence, meekness is an opportunity to exercise some self-control, right?
Yes.
And some reflection.
Right? Right. And
Mhm.
then perhaps even add a little serving of others in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some collaboration.
There you go. It's a
That's
list.
huge. That's
I was gonna say,
huge,
how
right?
far can it go?
That's
See, it
huge.
was so much fuller than we thought.
Mhm.
And that's why and you know what? And that's why it's so powerful. And that's why I feel like, I don't know if it's the trick of the enemy or a lack of our understanding of seeing meekness as weakness, or it's something that takes away from or distracts from who we are. But actually, it's a gift. It's a gift if we have an understanding of it.
That's good.
Well, I think part of the issue is, especially in the United States, entrepreneurs in particular are taught to be the antithesis of meek, right? That's what they're taught to do, the exact opposite of what we're discussing right now. But we're demonstrating through this dynamic conversation with all 6 of us here that actually 7, with 7 of us here, how to be meek, because we're all kind of adding and collaborating and saying, oh, I'm sorry, and let me show you how to be humble and teach. I mean, we're doing that right now.
Oh yeah, Joy. When you hear that word meek, you think, meek? Why would I want to be that? That sounds like a doormat, Because an entrepreneur, you're always thinking of time to be bold, go big or go home. You don't think of the word meek.
But you can be bold and be meek at the same time.
Yes.
Bold in your meekness.
Well, that's that's an important point that you make, Joy, about you can be bold and be meek at the same time. I'll use musicians as an example because this is a really really easy one. I can't count how many times I've had somebody after a worship service come up to me and tell me thank you for leading worship. Your voice is beautiful. Compliment. And for years my answer was oh, thank you, that's all the Lord. I What meekness isn't is false humility. That's not what meekness is. And I think that we need to recognize that, and also recognize that you can say thank you for the gift that, and also give credit to the Lord for the gift that he gave you. So it's important to recognize that the false meekness and the false humility are not what we're talking about, exemplifying. It is a real posture of the heart.
Yeah.
That's so good. And I'm glad you said that, Alicia. I'm thinking about the fact that, like, even me, the way I show up, I can own the fact that I have wisdom and understanding, right? But in the next breath, I'm usually saying, but that's because I asked the Lord for it, right? I know where my help came from. Let me tell you where your help can come from. It's not because I'm so great. Matter of fact, I'm flawed. And I have it. You can have it too, right? And so I think, yeah. So that was good. You can be bold even in your meekness.
Yeah.
Own what it is that God has given you. But at the same time, don't act like it's because of anything that you've done, right? That is what does the scripture say again? The Lord said to my Lord, sit here at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool.
So what that means is that if you're going to be meek, you can't be self-aggrandizing. You can't be self-promotional. You can't put yourself on a pedestal. You can't take credit for all these different things. At least that's my perspective. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think it's it goes back to that collaboration part, because any gift that God gives us, if that gift is it is a collaboration. He gives us a gift, we steward it. So thank you. Thank you that you recognized it. I couldn't have done it without the Lord. But I also took a part in that because I had to steward it. So I had a responsibility with that gift. And I think that's where that balance comes in.
That's good. What I heard when you said that, Alicia, is own your stewardship of it, but give God the credit for bringing the gift. because it was a gift.
That's good. That's good. Brandon, your lips are telling me you got something. I can always tell when something is on his mind.
And I definitely shouldn't play poker with Latara. That's for sure. No, I really like even the term false meekness, because I think almost our society, to Joy's point, has made this entrepreneur, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, and self-made is very popularized, right? Well, oh, that person's not a self-made millionaire. I'm a self-made millionaire. It's almost like this pedestal that you can get to. And I think when people think meek, they're almost thinking that false meekness of you just be a doormat, let everyone walk over you, which is obviously not at all what we are talking about today. And true meekness of being humble and loving and patient and giving others space, that looks a lot different than, hey, come and take advantage of me because I don't have a backbone, or spineless was one of the words that showed up on Google. That's not what it is, right? It's that false meekness that we want to avoid. We want to be meek, but not that false meek.
That's good. That's good. Listen, meekness, right? Meekness. What a great conversation. I know somebody else got something to say. We got a few minutes here.
I was going to just tag on to what Alicia said, because having worked around young musicians, I've mentored an awful lot of them. And I remember the ones that were just getting out there and just starting to perform again. These are secular artists, not Christian. Some of them were Christian. But the young ones would get very flustered when people would come up to them after their performance and say all these great, gushing kind of compliments. And they would say, "Miss Dory, what do I say?" I say, "You just say thank you. That's all you need to say."
That's good.
Mm-hmm. So then what I'll do, I'll jump back in here real quick and kind of run down what I see in this scripture, right? The Lord told my Lord to take the position of honor and wait, right? So what God will do with meekness is he'll say, "Hey, I got this position of honor for you. Why don't you come over here and wait with me? Wait upon the Lord, right? And then I'm going to show you the next, right?" And when we do that, then we can wait on the next instruction. What pride does, on the other hand, is we'll hear the instruction and we'll become fidgety, right? Because it doesn't make sense. Or, I can't sit here at your right hand. I got to go get this thing that you've already told me that is for me, right? And so they'll lean on their own strength and try to get it. That's what pride does, right? It doesn't matter if the instructions don't make sense when we are meek, because we have a quiet, gentle, and submissive spirit, right? So we can listen to the instruction that God gave. Come, sit at my right hand and wait in this position of honor until I make your enemies your footstool. So we can actually hear what the promise is in that. The promise is that God's going to do the work of making your enemies your footstool. That's what the meek inherit, because they are able to wait and be gentle and to be patient and receive the promises of God. With faith and patience, we receive the promises of God. But the prideful can't be patient, right? They're going to go and they're going to do it because, hey, if God didn't bring it at this speed, I got to just go get it because I can't afford to wait on it, right? And so they don't receive the promises of God. The promises of God is that inheritance, right? And so meekness in our business means if we're doing business in partnership with God and we're asking God questions and he's giving us answers, we need to be able to wait in a position of honor that he's placed us in, do the things that he's showing us to do in the moment, and wait for the next instruction, because he's putting things in position. He's putting people in position. He's putting circumstances and situations in position that we can inherit the promise that he already has for us, because he knows the plan he has for us to do good for us and not evil, right? But it takes us being able to wait upon him and believing that he will give us a good thing that he has for us.
So good. So good. This has been such a great, go on, Dory.
I said, good points, Phil.
Yeah. This was good. This is a great conversation this week. And I had a whole thought on some stuff. I just, earlier Phil he ignited me in our meeting, and I've been having some whole thoughts on
Share some of them.
Our direction. No, this is for the host
Oh.
only, not everybody.
Oh,
And their mama.
okay.
People want to get in, and then they want to begin to tell you what they think it should be, right? That's
Mhm,
pride.
mhm.
That's pride.
Mhm.
We need humility in this season. But I just thought of a great segment. I will kind of hint to the fact that we are shifting the flow of the podcast. And so I'm super excited about what God has revealed to me today. I ain't gonna tell the people. I'll tell the people. Jesus had the 12. Jesus didn't tell the people everything. All the other people, the 12 were privy, and even the 3 were even more privy, right? So
In due time, in due time.
in due time, in due time. This has been such a great episode on meekness. I love it when we're all here. One, because we all have a voice, we all show it, we all like to talk. That's why we all on here, right? That's why we're all on here, right? I love it. I love it. Everyone has a voice, but you also see that we are able to be meek, right? I think that was Joy that mentioned it earlier about how we're all on here. Might have been somebody else. I don't know. What? After a certain amount of kids and then grandkids and then a mama and a dog, you just forget who said stuff sometimes. So it's So it just is what it is. You just wait, Brandon. You just wait. You the youngest one here, so you don't have that forethought where sometimes you might call one daughter and one name. You're not that daughter. You this person. It happens. Trust me.
If you start calling them by the dog's name, you know you're in trouble.
Oh my goodness, yes. Oh, I've called Brayhan Mister. He just look at me and go, Mama, I'm not the dog, I'm your child. Oh, yeah, okay. This has been a great show. We want to thank you all for joining us this week. Join us next week for episode 450. Woo! That's going to be a good episode too, right? Always is. Make sure you share this out. Let people know that we are here. We're going to have an awesome December going into the new year, and we are so excited for that. We will see you all next week.
Bye, guys.